everyone. I'm excited to get started. Okay, deep breaths. Welcome to your Therapist's Favorite Therapist podcast. While I may be a licensed therapist, I'm not your licensed therapist. For a deeper connection, reach out to a medical provider today. Let's begin. Oh my gosh, I am so excited to have you here. I'm so excited for whoever is listening. This is the very first episode of your Therapist's Favorite Therapist podcast. And I'm excited to have you here. This is I guess you would say like the trailer to the podcast. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself, why I'm creating this, what we're doing here, why it's named what it's named, which I'm very excited about the name, and I hope that you will be too. I think it's so fun. And just overall, who I am. Well, my name is Loretta, as you might have guessed by the title and by the name of this. I am a clinical therapist. I earned my master's degree when I was, I think I was 22. I was turning 23. And then I got my license to practice when I was 23 years old. And it was such an interesting environment. In general, I got my master's in Houston, Texas. I'm originally from Baltimore, and so I moved halfway across the country, pretty close to the pandemic, if not, it was 2021, so it was still the pandemic, alive and well, and I was absolutely terrified. I was moving for, obviously, my master's, but also an internship, and it was terrifying. And then I took my first job on a military base. But before I get into that, I do want to tell you why I'm here to start this podcast. And I have found the world to be so incredibly divided recently. And when I say recently, I mean like 2016, right? Since 2016, so I guess technically it's been for the past 10 years. So not really recently, but I found the progression of it increasing rapidly, with opinions becoming more specific and allowing for less flexibility. The rigidity of it has increased, and the division that I saw starting really aggressively around 2016 has just snowballed into, I would say, isolation today. And so through this podcast and through this platform that I'm hoping to build, I really am looking to be part of the solution to bridge the gaps that I'm seeing, because there are large gaps and it's hard to know where to turn to when everyone is filled with either chaos, right, on one hand, or shame, and shame so deeply that we're so busy pointing fingers at each other that we're not actually progressing towards a united goal. And so what I hope for this podcast is to really come together to bridge, yes, this gap, but also actively be part of a solution. And action is what takes place in that. And I would say that I've always really been someone that wants to take action, and, that's sitting in this negative area of like, oh, the world is ending, these things are horrible, everyone is going to hate me, or everything is hateable. And it's really, really difficult to treat every day like doomsday. And listen, people benefit from believing it's doomsday, but when you look for it, you'll only see it, and it's hard to get out of that mindset. And so I'm hoping that this can be part of it. And there's a level of addiction that comes with feeling miserable, and I want to work to break that, because I've always pretty much been like this, right? If there's a conflict or situation or aspect that I want to change, I recognize that, oh my God, I'm complaining about it. And the first real memory in my, I would say, teenagehood that this was recognized is when I was around 14 or 15, and I was so deeply upset by the political climate. And if only I knew what was coming, right? I was so deeply upset by it, and I wanted it to be different. And not only was I upset about that, but I was also struggling with the dynamic in my school structure. And now looking back, it was funny that I was upset about those things because it was really truly a great high school that I went to. And although it was great, it could have still been better, and that was the whole purpose, is that I thought there was changes, both like through the culture and through structure, that we could improve it, and I wanted to. And I recognized that I was complaining so much about the same thing, but I was not willing to create a solution. And once I recognized that, I really took initiative to change it. And so I went to political conferences. I advocated for what I believed in. I ran and then also lost in a student body election. But I think the whole point is that I tried, and that's what I'm doing here. I'm not saying that this platform is going to become this, salvation to culture in the United States and beyond. But I am saying that I am hoping to be part of the solution. And I'm hoping that through this, I encourage you to be part of the solution as well. Because as I said, if you're going to sit in misery, it's going to find you. And part of the real spark around this is because I have always been like that. I've always been someone that wants to take action and change the things that are happening to me. But I find that in this past year, I have almost lost it. And I've become so comfortable being miserable and okay with it that I seek it out. And I'm finding that being radical in trying to make things better is one, vastly difficult. But I would also say it's the closest thing to change that will come. And 2025 was hard for me. It was very difficult. I struggled immensely. And because of those things, because of all those things, it was incredibly easy to choose to be a victim of my own doing and or not doing. And so that's what I'm hoping for this, to really impact the people around me, to impact myself, in hoping to create this platform. And so I want to tell you a little bit about my background and who I am and how I got here, because you're probably wondering, like, well, why should I listen to you? And I will say, you don't have to. I'm not your expert in your life, right? I don't know you, I'm not your therapist, but I am a therapist, and I'm hoping that this will come through a therapeutic lens when I'm evaluating information, challenging information, and moving forward to a collective action that I'm hoping to take. And so, and also, I want to do this. I've been wanting to do this for so long. I have tried to do this podcast over and over again. Things just never felt right, or I got embarrassed talking in front of a camera, in front of a microphone that picks up every sound. And frankly, this is terrifying. I am scared to do this. And I don't think it's fear of talking to a camera. I'm just in this room by myself. I think it's more the fear of putting myself out there and not knowing what's coming next. And I wouldn't necessarily even say it's fear. I think it's just the unknown. And that's what's scary. And it's scary to take this step when you're comfortable existing as is. But I think the whole point is that once I face reality, I'm really not comfortable. I need this change, and I want this change, and so I'm reaching out. And the reason for my discomfort will come around full circle, but I want to tell you about my career and how I got here. So as I said, I graduated when I was 22 years old with my master's in social work, and I got my license to practice when I was 23, living in Texas. And I actually got my license. It took so long for me to finally process my license, but I got it December, God, I think it was December 13th of 2023. Oh my God, what am I saying? I just glitched. December 13th of 2021 is when I got my license to practice. And I was living in Texas and I was applying to travel jobs because I knew I wanted to travel and I wanted to do something called travel therapy, right? Travel social work. And so I was applying to all these jobs and it was relatively difficult because I didn't have my license yet. But I looked and I had it and I was applying to all these travel jobs, but it was around the holidays. So I was planning to fly back, or I did fly back a few days later and I landed. I was in Baltimore with my family and I get this job, or I get this call out of nowhere. And I knew that I was putting my resume out there, so it wasn't so crazy. I was answering the phone to make sure that, like, oh, maybe there's a travel position. And it was. There was this call for this person that I don't even really remember submitting my application to. And she was like, hi, it's nice to meet you. I'm so glad we could connect. I have this job here. It's 60 hours a week for 6 months on a military base in New Jersey. Do you want to apply to it? Oh, and by the way, you're working with the government, with the Afghan refugees who escaped the Taliban. That's the population. And I'm like, yeah, sure. That sounds great. And I was like, okay, vastly different from what I was applying to. A lot of these jobs were not 60 hours. That was, a lot per week, and none of them were 6 months. That was unheard of. But I was like, okay, sure, whatever, I'll apply. And probably like an hour, maybe 2 hours, not even, I get a call back and she's like, hey, you got it. Want to start? And I'm like, I did what? She's like, yeah, you want to start? I'm like, yeah, but I have, all my stuff is in Texas and I'm in Baltimore right now. She's like, oh, well, when would you want to start? And I was like, how about like January 3rd? And she's like, okay. And I began the process to start this job. And at the time I was applying to a few other ones and I was looking between Princeton, New Jersey, where this was on a military base, Denver, Colorado, and Honolulu, Hawaii. Which, God, all of those would have been so incredible and I was really looking to go to any of them. But this one was so appealing because I could start so quickly and it was 2.5 hours, 3 hours from home. And after living halfway across the country, I really craved my parents. Like I just wanted to be around them, or at least close to them. And so I was like, oh my God, I just got a job. Thank God. But like, oh my God, I just got a job. It's December 16th. I'm currently in Baltimore for the holidays. And I meant to go back, but I now need to pack up my entire apartment in Texas, figure out what to do with my stuff, and then move halfway back across the country. And so overwhelming was not even close to describe the feelings that were coursing through me. But I was like, oh my God, I love a good challenge and I love to be rushed at the time, not anymore. But I loved all these things. And so I was like, oh my gosh, so I moved my flight to earlier so that I could go home, get movers, do all of these things. And that's exactly what I did. I celebrated the holidays in Maryland and then I flew to Texas. And it was chaotic, to say the least. It was so chaotic, but I did it. I packed up all my things, I hired movers, I did the entire thing, and then I was saying goodbye to my entire network that I built in Texas, which was really difficult because I grew so much in that year. And I made really great friends, and a lot of them did move out of Houston by the time I was leaving. But I had to take a step back and look at the pure growth because 6 months, less than 6 months into moving to Texas, I was really scared to leave the house. I had no friends. And then I had all these friends that I was now saying goodbye to. All that I had to process within like getting back, saying goodbye, packing everything up, celebrating New Year's, and then getting on a flight and moving home. Because also, I forgot to mention, I shipped my car. I shipped my car from Houston all the way to Baltimore. And so it was just a lot of moving. I didn't know when I was going to come back to Texas. And if I was going to come back, I knew that I had all my stuff in a storage unit because it was just cheaper that way. But it was a lot. And so then I fly back, I land, I get picked up, and my car's pulling up with all my stuff because I got shipped, obviously. And so then I have to unpack all of this just to repack it because then I have to go to New Jersey. And so it was a really big whirlwind of events. And I should probably also mention that I did this, I think I already did mention, but I did this completely alone because my parents weren't able to come back with me. And so I packed all my stuff up and got ready to go to New Jersey. So I did. I thankfully they put us up in hotels, which was incredible, except God, my car got broken into while I was there, and they only targeted out-of-state license like plates. So I got my car broken into. It was a horrible situation. But this military base was 45 minutes away, and I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. And so I drove onto it, and I got my ID, and I'm going onto this base. I'm like, holy shit, I'm here. Not only am I here, but like, where the hell am I? This is huge. I didn't realize how larger than life a military base was, and how crazy this like project was. And so I was telling my mom, Stacy, this, and I was like, yeah, it's like a city inside of a city. She's like, yeah, duh, Loretta, like, what did you think it was? And I was like, well, I don't know. She goes, have I taught you nothing? And I was like, I don't know. And she's like, oh my gosh. And I should probably mention that she was born and grew up on a military base because her father and my grandfather served in the military. So she knew all about this, but I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. And because it was, I'm pretty sure, an international military base, are all military bases international? I don't know, whatever. But the food around it, incredible. And Princeton had incredible food. And so I go into this military base, I'm working with so many incredibly cool people because it brings in like staff from around the world. But a lot of them were so much older than me, and so I was really trying to hide the fact that I was younger. But I was working as a clinical therapist for that project, and it was so impactful, and it really shaped my life. Like I still think about this project to this day. I think about the friends that I made, because when you're working 60 hours a week with someone on a military base, and then you go back and you live in the same hotel as a lot of these people, you just really learn about them, and you love them, and it was such an interesting dynamic. But unfortunately, that contract did end. I made so many great friends. Actually, it was really funny because we were all wearing masks that covered our entire face because of the pandemic and all. And I would get stopped because we would wear it was winter, so we would wear like large jackets, but I would get stopped by both the military and also the refugees who were there, assuming that I was a refugee on the base. And I thought it was just the sweetest thing because their reaction after, I'd be like, I don't understand what you're saying. I need to grab a translator. They were like shocked, and also the military was shocked some of the time. The ones that knew me weren't, but it was just such an interesting dynamic. But the project ended abruptly, or transitioned abruptly, because of the Ukraine war. And so I then was asked to be part of this project to help with the documentation, and I was really able to lean into educating staff, which was fun because I knew about, or I guess knew more about, the technology of like computers and printing and Excel. So I really enjoyed that project, even though I was sad in how it ended. But from there, I would always travel in between with some of my closest friends. So I went to, I think the project ended, and I went to Guadalupe, which is an island. And so I went there, and then I came back, and I was job searching, and nothing, because this job was so impactful, everything just felt like a step down, and I wasn't excited. And so then my friend was like, the same one that I went to Guadalupe with, was like, hey, like, let's go hike a volcano in Guatemala. And I was like, okay. And so I went with him, and we hiked the volcano. It was so much fun. And then I started to really panic at this idea that I was like going to go back home without a job. I was like full on panicked. And he's like, well, go travel more. And I was like, well, is that an option? And he was like, yeah, you know how to travel. You backpack all the time independently. And I do. Like, I've always traveled. And so I booked a one-way ticket to Mexico. I ended up staying there for 2 weeks in a small town called Puerto Escondido. I love Mexico. I've always loved Mexico. I love the people there. I love the culture, and I loved this town. I think about this all the time. And I actually learned how to surf there, which was so, oh my God, so much fun. I really need to go back to Mexico because I miss it so much. But I had to go back home for my friend's like wedding bridal shower. And so I flew back home. I was really like, okay, I need to find a contract. And I think it was like a week later I found one, and I was going to go all the way across the country to Bend, Oregon. And I was like, this is great, but I have to find housing, because before the military provided it, and now I'm like, oh my God, I need to find housing. So I was looking on this website to try to find housing online that like travel people use. And so I'm looking, and I knew I wanted to live with a roommate, and I wanted to live with a cat, preferably, because my sister doesn't like when I say this, or she disagreed when I brought this up, but I was like, yeah, I want to stay with a cat because cats clean themselves, whereas dogs rely on their owners to clean them. So I knew that a cat would be cleaner. She disagrees with this. We bickered about it, but I knew that I wanted to stay with a cat. And sorry, Alexa, love you. But I wanted to stay with a cat and a roommate. And so I was looking between these two women who were pretty different. One was like, I think 30s, closer to my age, and then one was like 75 at the time. And her photos were like really grainy and questionable, but I was like, I'm not shipping my car all the way across the country. It was such a pain and so expensive for only a 3-month contract. Like, let me see if they have a car. Hail Mary out here. And she had one. And so I stayed with Stephanie, who at the time was 75. She's a massage therapist, I think still today. She was teaching, and she had 2 cats. And when I say I hit the jackpot with living with her, I adore her. Like, I think I would move back there just because I would want to live with her. She was so cool. She was retired. Other than teaching, she would teach stuff, and because she retired, she had all kitchen appliances. Every single kitchen appliance you could think of, she had them. And so it was so much fun to cook at her place because she had the coolest things. And I was obsessed with her cats, and she gave me her truck to use. I don't know if I mentioned that, but she gave me her truck to use. And mind you, like, I'm 5'3", she is like 4'11", and this truck was the biggest thing I've ever seen. I was like, oh yeah, this is so easy to drive. I'm like, my hands are shaking as I'm like, yeah, this is so much fun. But she gave me her truck to use, and mind you, like, we're strangers, but we met on the internet. But she was so much fun to live with. She like would bring me like homemade tortillas in bed. I think I've mentioned already, this is the 3rd time now, but her cat was it was like 1 year old, so it was like so kitten. It was so sweet. And we would go to the bars. We would go to like breweries together because Bend, Oregon is really big into that. She like took me to these like nature areas. She just was such an incredible person. And we were friends. Like, she was such a great friend. And I loved living with her. And it was sad to leave. But I knew that I didn't want to stay on the West Coast at the time because I was moving to visit friends like so much. And in the 3-month period, I traveled across country twice. And where I was in Oregon, it was such a small airport that I had to take like 3 planes to get to the East Coast where my family was, and it was exhausting and expensive. And so I knew this was the summer when I was there, and I think that if I knew what I know now, I would have stayed longer so that I could have learned to ski there because it's a huge ski town, which I didn't know. But everything works out, I think, for the reason I did love the job there. I worked at a stabilization center that helped with mental health, so it wasn't the police or hospital, we would be the middle ground. And so I really liked the program that we worked in, and I loved the structure of it. And then I eventually switched to night shift, which was so much fun because night shift people are so cool. And I was able to be a lead clinician there. And so I knew that I had to leave Oregon because I knew that I wanted to be on the East Coast for at least the holidays, and I was dreaming of going to actually a warmer place. And that unfortunately didn't happen. Warmer did not occur, but closer did. And so I ended up going to Vermont, and I worked at the only psychiatric hospital in the state. And it was such an interesting place. I was able to celebrate the holidays in Maryland and still maintain this job. And so I went to Vermont. I lived in not the best area, it was called Brattleboro. And I again lived with a roommate and a cat. And this place was a psychiatric hospital, which I think I already mentioned, but I swear to you, the first month I was absolutely terrified of being there because I was absolutely convinced that it was haunted. And there wasn't, listen, it was haunted. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, there was underground tunnels, only key fobs, no, like, electronic anything. The internet, it was haunted. But other than the jokes aside, it was such a fun place to be. I loved working there. I loved the people. But I knew that I didn't want to stay in Vermont, which was really sad because I loved where and who I lived with, and I liked my roommate, but I loved her cat. I've never in my life loved a cat so much. And to the point where I knew this cat for less than a month, and I was like actively considering staying home for the holidays because the cat would have been alone, and I adored her. She would like, her personality was so cute. She would like come to the door and greet me, and she would like put a paw out because she wanted me to pet her, and she would like yell at me to like sit down because she didn't like it when I picked her up. She wanted to like sit on my lap and just purr, and she would like wake me up in the morning very gently to cuddle, and she would sometimes just like lay on my face. She just was so sweet, and I loved her so much. And you know, my structure working at the psychiatric hospital was really aggressive because I wasn't just doing that, I was also doing telehealth. So my schedule was, I'd wake up at 5 a.m., I would go to the gym, I would shower at the gym, I would go to work from like 8 to 4:30, then I would come back home, shower again fully, and then, because you're at the hospital all day, and so like I would shower again fully, pack all of my stuff for the next day, and then I would do 3 hours of therapy again. And then I'd go to sleep and read. And she was my companion for actually I extended, so it was for 5 months, I think it was. She really was this like companion that I had. And she was with me every step of the way when it was like cold and dark, and she was the person that I would talk to. Oh, well, she wasn't a person, she was a cat, but she was my best friend. And it was awful, like leaving her, and I cried for probably like 2 weeks, I'd say, because I was so upset because I knew that I wasn't coming back, and I knew that I wasn't going to live with this cat again. But if her owner's watching and ever needs a break, I volunteer. I love this cat. But I did leave Vermont, and I was really hoping to go somewhere larger because at this point in time, I was chasing these jobs that had higher levels of pay, but it came with a cost because I wasn't staying in places that I actually enjoyed. Bend, Oregon would have been the closest one to somewhere that I enjoyed, and I liked Princeton, but it wasn't somewhere that I was building. And so I was really chasing these jobs that had a lot of hours that I was working and pay, because my whole goal was to get rid of my student loans, which I have been really accomplishing. But I was looking to not let that get in my way of creating a good life for myself and creating a place where I could grow as a person and set roots down. So I was looking for like California, Hawaii, somewhere like that I would love to go and not feel like I need to escape and travel. And unfortunately, those big cities did not occur, but I did find a contract later. But everything at the time, I was looking for all these contracts and everything kept falling through. It was like starting to become the summer and I could not find a job to save my life. And I'm like, this is my third contract. I have an impressive resume at this point. I have telehealth. Like, I couldn't find anything. So I, swallowed my pride and took a local contract. And 3 days in, they canceled. And I was devastated, absolutely devastated. Not because of the contract, but because I was so exhausted of like applying to all these jobs for just short periods of time. So I was like, okay, if I can find a job that allows me to travel and is in a cool place, I'm sold. I'll have a permanent job. And I'm like, oh, please, I'll sacrifice. But no, I was like, I need this. And I found exactly that. I hit the jackpot because I ended up on Nantucket, and I was like over the moon about it because I tried to get a contract over the summer on Nantucket and I got rejected for it, or I never got even they wouldn't submit me. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm going to Nantucket. I knew nothing about Nantucket, let's be clear. I had no idea what it was, but I knew that it was going to be a really cool place in the summer. Problem being, I was going in the winter, I guess the fall. And so I was like, okay, I'm moving to this island, but not only that, it had a flexible schedule. At the time when I was talking to them about it, I was like, oh my God, I could theoretically travel for 2 weeks out of the month based off of the structure. And they're like, yeah, like you could. And so I'm like, sold. And so I ended up moving to this island this island's called Nantucket, and completely blind. They had employee housing that I could pay for, so I took that, and I was excited to be there. So the first month that I worked there was a little rough. There was definitely growing pains between myself and my boss at the time. And that quickly ended because I will say it changed so much of my life. I, to this day, adore her. She was the clinical leader of the organization at the time and also of my program. And I loved working with her. I love being mentored by her. I think that she is an incredible, incredible person and clinician. And I just really enjoyed working with her. And working in this program, I was a crisis clinician. It was like the coolest job ever. And I stayed there for 2 years, okay? So the job was I worked on call to do mental health for the entire island, which is so cool to say. So I'd respond to like the police, fire, everything in the hospital, the school, the community. Like, that's so cool. Like, I got so much diverse experience with anyone on an island, and it's such a cool structure of the job. And I'd work 40 hours a week, so it was technically 2 days, like a week, and then I would have the rest to do whatever, hence why I could have traveled. And at first that schedule wasn't happening, which is why we were having growing pains, but then, flexibility was permitted. And I just loved working with her. And we worked together for over a year and a half, I think around a year and a half. And in that time, I ended up actually taking 72 hours a week. So I was doing 72 hours a week. I was also doing telehealth at the time. And I just really loved working with her and that team. It was so much fun. And then she left the organization. And I was devastated, like absolutely devastated. I knew that it was not going to be the same. Yeah, I just knew it was going to look different, be different, and I was heartbroken. And I was right to be heartbroken, because I will say that she, in my opinion, was the heart of the organization. And when she left, it's like the heart left. And I was so upset. And I was benefiting from her absence financially, because I got a major promotion and raise that she helped and I helped get myself. And I think that at the time I was reacting so aggressively because I knew I was going to end up leaving, which I did. And it was such an interesting dynamic because she valued me so much, and the organization valued me a lot, even after her departure. But as time progressed, it changed. And I didn't change, but the way in which I was treated changed. Because she was such an advocate for the people that, worked with her and for the organization, that I think a lot of that was lost when she left. And, she had big shoes to fill that I don't think anyone would have been able to do. And it was just really upsetting. And the start of 2025, I knew that things just didn't feel right within my job. What I was saying, I think, before I interrupted myself, was I went from such a high point of being valued to then, as leadership changed and the view of me changed, despite me not changing, it was decreased. I was becoming viewed differently. And I couldn't understand. I tried to do so many things to fight for myself and for what I believed in and my worth, and the fight was lost. In a sense, right? Like, it was lost in terms of, like, I was viewed differently and viewed more negatively, despite myself not changing to alter this opinion. And not only was this happening in my professional life, where I was going from, like, the top of the world to devalued, it was also happening in my personal life, within my friendships. Because when I moved to Nantucket, I struggled prior to having friends. Like, my best friend was a cat. And then as soon as I moved to Nantucket, oh my God, I was having social engagements every single week. I was booked and busy. I had 3 different friend groups. So incredible, right? Like, 3 major friend groups. 2 of them combined into one, because scheduling 3 different friend groups is so difficult. But these major people that I found on this island, because Nantucket is a very special place, and it brings in interesting people, I'd say, especially those who live year round. And I met these incredible friends that I still hold and that still impact me to this day. But as 2025 was occurring, the way in which I was viewed in my career was essentially, like, going down. Like, they were not viewing me the same, and I was becoming devalued. And that was also happening in my friendships, which was really hard, because, again, I didn't do anything to change. These things almost changed with the blink of the eye, and I felt incredibly, and still I will say, feel incredibly blindsided by the things that occurred, because I didn't see any signs, at least within the friendships, right? I did see signs as the job was changing, but there was nothing that I could wrap my head around and understand, because I know that I didn't do anything to change or alter this. And it's devastating to watch as you become cared for less without cause. And I tried so hard to fit myself and make myself smaller in order to stay, because this job not only was my employment, but it also held my security and my residency on island. unless I wanted to, find a new housing and all. And it was just such, and is something that I'm still actively recovering from. And that's what part of the factors as to what made 2025 so difficult. And I knew that things weren't right. I had this gut instinct, and I think the gut instinct started as soon as my boss left. And because of this, I was like, maybe if I get some distance from the island and have 2 different locations that I can live in, then things will get better. And so me and a coworker and also a friend ended up signing a lease to part-time be in Boston. We were like, maybe a city will be fun, right? Like separate from the island a little bit. And thank God I did that, because that's where I am now. And I would feel completely lost without that. All these signs were coming together that this was no longer going to be an option. I was no longer going to be living on island. And I refused to look at it. I was okay with being miserable if it meant that things stayed the same. And I think that is what one of the biggest lessons I've learned from 2025 is, I wanted this thing so much. I wanted to work on island. I wanted to continue to be valued really highly and make these really great goals in my career come true, even though I knew I was not in the right place. And it's so hard to want something and want something so deeply that you don't recognize that the thing that you want is slowly killing you. And it took away so much. It took away the cost that was being asked of me was too high. And recognizing that, both in my friendships and in my career, changed my path. And I think, that's all of 2025, and compromising worked to make me comfortable with being miserable and being in a situation that no longer served me, because I was trying to bend and keep what I knew I loved and what I knew was good, but that no longer was serving me. And it's such a difficult realization to have, that what you want isn't what is good for you, and need to change, because this was, yes, a choice that I was making, but it wasn't a choice that I wanted to make. And so I moved off island, and I left my job at the end of 2025. And now I'm here in Boston in this new transition phase in my life, where I am looking towards the future of what I want to create. Because I always have telehealth, and I do that, and I love it, and I love the people I connect with, and I love doing workshops. And I think it was such a pivotal point to have to face the music in terms of, this is what is happening, you need to change before it destroys you, because it was. And that's why, and or one of the reasons as to why I was just so miserable and comfortable with it, because I felt like the options that I could choose to make things better wasn't there. And it's what really actually inspired doing this podcast and creating this. And in between, in between moving from, I just got lost in my own head. I forget where I was. From the moment I left Nantucket to now in, oh my gosh, it's February 2026, I've been going through such a large change because everything feels so uncertain. And creating this has been something that I've wanted to do, and I was standing in my way of getting the things I want. And so this is me doing it. And speaking of things that I have been wanting to do, I have been wanting to work in sports psychology for probably an entire year at this point, and I find it very difficult to break into as a clinical therapist. And so I've been trying to be brave and put myself out there. And one of the things that I did recently was this is so crazy, I went to Milan and I volunteered with Team USA at the Olympics. Ugh, it was so cool. Like, there's so many things that I was holding myself back from because I was scared. And I think the lesson here, and one of the things that I'm leading by, that I've always led by outside of 2025, is to do things scared and to do them anyways. So here I am, being scared and doing it. And I encourage you to do it as well. And so I want to tell you a little bit about the structure of this podcast. So for the most part, it will stay the same. It will be typically around a topic that I find interesting, that is potentially controversial, what the research says, all from a therapeutic lens, what I believe to be true, a call to action, and then the summary of like what we took away and what I think we should do with this information. And so that's pretty much what it will look like. I'm hoping to get really good topics for everyone, and I'm really excited for what is coming next because I'm excited to get into this content. And I do want to also tell you a little bit about why this podcast is named what it's named. So Your Therapist's Favorite Therapist comes from, one, it's a fun play on words, and then two, Chapel Rowan said this, I'm your artist's favorite artist, and she was copying or taking inspiration from Sasha Colby, a drag queen, who said, I'm your drag queen's favorite drag queen. And I find it so fun, right? Like, I just find it like a fun name, but also I wanted to give tribute to the LGBTQ plus community because my family, my parents are gay, and we have an incredibly blended family. There's 4 gay moms and 5 siblings. Wait, 5 including me? No, 5. I have 5 siblings. There's 6 kids. And it's just, gay women have actively changed my life. My 2 primary parents are my biological mom and then someone who's technically my stepmom. She came into my life when I was 15, and her son, Nate, my brother, came into my life when he was 6. And so he's been my brother for years now. And he's my brother. And so his other mom, Randy, I would say functions really as like a stepmom and or like an aunt. And she then got married to a woman. And so hence the 4 moms. And then the woman, her name is Abby, who she married, has 3 children. And so that is the large group of people that accompany my family. And then we have my grandparents, who are technically Randy's parents, but we call them our grandparents. So what I'm trying to get at is it's a very, very blended gay family. And I thought that it was so funny, like how intimidating we can be. And I was talking to my mom, Stacy, who's technically my stepmom. She's my mom. My mom, Stacy, about this, and I was like, yeah, we're so intimidating, like we should get jackets. She's like, yeah. And I was like, yeah, they could say like the Gady Bunch, like the gay Brady Bunch. And because I'm so funny, like they took that and ran, and so that's our group chat. And so we're just incredibly blended, and I wanted to give tribute to the gay community because of that. And so this is the podcast. I am incredibly excited. I'm so happy that you're here and that you're listening, and I'm really ready for this to just begin. And I'm hoping to God that I don't have to redo this again, because the first time, actually that's not true, the first full time that I did this, my parents told me that the background looked like I was being held in jail, so I'm hoping that they approve of this time. They may not. We'll see. They're in charge because they typically, I would say, guide me in the right direction. And so I'm hoping that you enjoyed this podcast. I'm so excited for the next episode and to have you here. I think I just glitched a little bit. It's going to happen. We're just going to go with it. I don't know if there's anything else that I want to say. I would say that if you find yourself in a mental health crisis, please dial 911. If you need to talk to someone, please dial 988. I'm so glad to have you here. Oh, and I did want to also mention I am starting a mail club. So this is going to be a therapeutic and art combined mail club. It will have an art print, stickers, a newsletter, and therapy therapy techniques of what I'm introducing to you, of like workshops and work. I'm glitching a little bit. It's time to go, but workbooks. Oh my gosh, workbooks. So mail club, art, stickers, worksheets for therapy, a newsletter, and anything else that I decide. I am so happy, and I will talk to you next time. Bye.